And Matt, Chad, actually, oh, it's being recorded.
Matt, I wasn't sure if we're live yet or not.
Yep, we I just pushed us live.
Okay, well, great. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Chad Bergman. I'm with Movement Mortgage. Very passionate about my business and the community I serve. I've been a Colorado native for my entire life. Raised my two boys in South Denver, and as the mortgage world evolves, I have been just very appreciative of what Movement has done recently. These two gentlemen that have joined me are part of our reverse mortgage department. They focus strictly on reverse purchases and refinances. They have a wealth of information. They have publications that you can also find. And not to ruin their surprise or their fire, but I'm just super excited to talk to them about how a reverse purchase mortgage specifically, can be used for realtors to acquire more business. I think it's a highly underutilized product. A conversation needs to happen. And we have a lot of seniors in our Denver market, Colorado in general, who again are maybe just home wealthy, but they're struggling. And there might be an opportunity to put them into a different house with a different type of loan. And that's why I wanted to bring Harlan, Accola, and George Vrban on to join me today.
Thanks a bunch, Chad. First of all, let's talk a little bit about what George and I do. I do the talking and George does the work, which is a really nice arrangement. I used to be a loan officer. I've closed over 1,000 of these personally, but at this stage of the game, George is the one that actually does the work and puts things together, talks to your buyer, talks to the listing realtor, the selling realtor, depending upon who's involved in the transaction, to make sure that things come together. We are the fastest. Our ops team is incredible. We're the fastest at doing reverse mortgages for purchase in the country. We do them in 17 days or less, if necessary, from the time of the accepted offer. And probably the biggest thing is this is not just about doing mortgages. Quite frankly, anybody can do a forward mortgage, anybody can do a VA mortgage, anybody can do a reverse mortgage. The issue is getting the house sold. The issue is getting the listing. And George, if you can just kind of mention a little bit about what you do as far as strategy. This isn't about filling out an application and saying, let's go forward. It's a whole lot more involved than that. So somebody actually lists and sells.
Yeah, I think the big thing that I try to do is, and thanks again for having me on, Chad.
Yeah.
Just a little quick background. I've been doing this for about 20 years. The biggest thing I try to do is separate myself from everybody else because I teach it as a retirement strategy. Probably more than anything is literally showing clients how they can have more purchasing power, how they can have actually an opportunity to buy more of a house with less cash and no mortgage payments for the rest of their life. But after I teach these retirement strategies, I work with financial planners in particular in 26 different states, including Colorado. And here's what's interesting, and this is the part I'm curious about the realtors on this panel. When I get done educating and I teach these courses to financial planners, they get it and they're excited. And then all of a sudden they tell me, go ahead and talk to the client. The client's on board. And the very first thing they ask me is, do you have a realtor that really understands how this concept works? So I'm just kind of curious on the realtors on here. You're welcome if there's a chat box or anything. Does anybody want a referral from us, by the way, on this call? And the reason I say that is because that's one of the first questions people ask me when I get done educating these clients on this particular program. So there's some really fascinating strategies that we teach and what we do and show clients how they can use this tool. If they use it effectively and efficiently, we literally can show clients how to make their money go further in retirement with this concept and how they can buy their forever house when you deal with people that are 62 and over, that they have an opportunity to buy really the house they really want with this kind of a tool and this kind of a program.
Thanks for that, George. I don't think there's any real estate agent that does not want a referral, by the way, of somebody that wants to buy a house. So that's pretty much a yes question of everybody on. So So here's the deal. The first thing we got to be aware of is everybody in the real estate business has been a little bit fooled for a while. It's kind of like a magician that's doing stuff with this hand, and what's really going on is over in this hand or in his pocket or whatever, and everybody's looking at this hand over here. Everybody's been looking at the millennials for years, about the last 10 years, as what's funded your commissions and your business and get somebody into a house and compete with the other millennials. And that's what's on TV and the advertisements and everything else. Well, guess who the biggest buyers are? Old people like me. Not my kids. Have my kids bought a house? Yes. All 4 of our sons have bought a house. But we just displaced the millennials last year, according to the National Association of Realtors, as the single biggest buyers and sellers of real estate in the nation. And it's likely never to go away for at least another 20 years because there's 10,000 of us turning 62 every day.
Wow.
51% of listings, according to the National Association of Realtors in the last fiscal year, baby boomers, old people, white-haired people, not the young people. Nothing against young people. I like millennials. And quite frankly, we need to create inventory for millennials. And we got to get old people like me out of their house. We sold our house a couple of years ago to a millennial with 2 kids. That's where we raised our 4 sons. They want to raise their kids there. But it didn't make sense for us anymore. My wife and I, 63 and 61. What are we living in a 6-bedroom, 5-bath house with 5,000 square feet for? I mean, I couldn't even find her when I come home from work. I don't know, maybe she was hiding from me, but it was crazy. I mean, that's not a house for us. 2 stories, 5 acres to take care of. Really? No, that doesn't make sense. So we moved, and we happen to be 40% of buyers. Millennials are only 28% of buyers, by the way. So again, don't not focus on millennials because they need houses and they are getting just weary of fighting to get that house, mainly because there's not enough of us that sell and move to 55 plus communities or move into more rural areas or further out of town because we don't have to drive to work every day. So the house that I want, the house that we bought here that I live in now, as compared to our big old house where we raised the boys, all in one level. Master suite on 1 floor, smaller, completely designed for me. Millennials would not want to buy this house. This house is designed for old people. And we love it. And we can stay here until we're 105 years old. But this is not a house that a family would buy. It's just not really set up that way. And it's not designed that way. So what we have to do if we want to increase the inventory out there is we have to get old people to move. Just a few weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal, there was an article about this that said nobody in our age group want to move. Why? Because either A, we have a 3% mortgage,
Right.
or we have our house paid off and we have no payment. So, to try to get us to move, we're just going to stay put. And I'm sure you've heard those irritating 2 words more than you want to hear. I guess we'll just stay put. And you walk out and it's like, okay, well, I got to go find somebody else to try to list a house with. But if you explain this, I want to just share this short little story of what happened with a realtor that came to this class just a couple of weeks ago. She said, Harlan, I had somebody exactly like that. It was in California. They should have sold their house, and I lost the listing just a week or so ago. Would you call them and tell them what you just told us? And so I did. And I'm going to tell you this because it tells you basically everything that we're going to explain during this time together. So I called up, it was Jack and Joan. I said, Jack, I understand that you're kind of thinking about listing your house and all of a sudden you backed out. I talked to your realtor, Becky, and she said that, it makes sense for you to move. And he said, well, yeah, it makes sense for us to move. We're in a $1.5 million house, not far from the beach, but we don't go to the beach that much anymore. The kids don't even come here very much. And we got $100,000 worth of deferred maintenance on this house. We bought it super cheap. So now we got a problem with capital gains because we bought it for like $300,000-400,000 grand back, I don't know, decades ago. And now it's worth 1.5 million, according to Becky. And yeah, we want to sell it because we still have a $600,000 mortgage because we, refinanced 18 times and took money out and everything else. And now here we sit and we got a $600,000 mortgage and we're paying how much? Well, we're paying about $2,200 a month. and we're 71 and 72. Do we want a mortgage payment anymore? No. But this is what happens, Harlan. If we sell this house for 1.5 million, you're going to walk away with somewhere in the neighborhood of 800 grand. We got to pay $100,000 to for capital gains. And so we're going to end up with about 700,000. And we need money to move. We need money for furniture for the new house. We want to move to Palm Desert. And really the only house that my wife and I'd be satisfied with is about $1 million in Palm Desert in a 55 plus community. And we really don't want to go down to something that's a lot cheaper and not very nice. And we really don't want to move out of the area because our kids and grandkids are in Southern California, which is the number one reason why, by the way, how old people decide where they're going to live. I moved to Minnesota, which happens to be 35, 40 below in the winter. Why did I move there? Because 4 sons, 4 daughter-in-laws, and 5 grandchildren. That is what motivates us to move. Don't ever forget that. That's the number one reason why seniors decide to move. So if you want to find out where the baby boomers are going to move, find out where their kids are. If you want to find somebody that wants to move, ask the kids where their parents are, and you will get leads immediately. And I'm going to give you some very specific things to do that will get you listings and sales this week, some leads right now that you can go after. But let me finish the story because it covers everything. I said, well, so if you move there, you've only got about a $300,000 mortgage, $400,000 mortgage. He said, well, we're going to have 700 grand, 750, something like that, depending upon exactly what we sell it for. We pay for furniture. Now we're down to 650. So we got a $350,000 mortgage. Harlan, a $350,000 mortgage at 7% costs more than our current $600,000 mortgage at 2.75.
Why would we do
it? I mean, those are easy numbers.
Yeah.
So imagine somebody like that saying, okay, so we're going to move and our mortgage payment goes up when it's half the amount. I mean, he said, so guess what he told me? So we're just going to stay put, which is exactly what we told Becky. And I said, well, just a minute, not so fast. Don't stay put yet, because I will give you a mortgage. You haven't heard about what Movement Mortgage wants to do for you, which is why I called you. I will give you a $400,000 mortgage based on your $600,000 down payment, which will be a reverse mortgage, and the payments will be optional, and you'll be able to keep your other $100,000 to move, to buy furniture, whatever, and keep whatever's left and put back in your investments. And he said, now that sounds too good to be true. And I said, well, it's not. It's the truth that I can give you a $400,000 reverse mortgage, and then you come in with the other $600 as a down payment. You're done making mortgage payments for the rest of your life. And besides that, you've got a $400,000 IRA that you told me about. I'm going to be able to get all of your IRA money out tax-free because of the way that you're going to use your reverse mortgage for a tax deduction. He said, now it really is too good to be true. I want you to really lay this thing out. So I spent the next 45 minutes laying everything out. And guess what he did, Chad? Next morning, what do you think he made a phone call to?
He wanted to know how quickly he could list his house.
Exactly correct. Calls Becky and he lists the house the next morning when it was a stay put, not listing it at all. There are millions of people like that all over the place. And we just have to be able to explain it to him, because he already, no matter what the realtor told him, he didn't want to trade a $600,000 2.75 mortgage for a $600,000 or $400,000 or $600,000 forward mortgage. So the bottom line is that we have to make sure that we are talking their language so that they understand that this is designed for them. And we answered all the other questions. He said, well, yeah, but I don't want my kids to get ripped off in the end. And by the way, George, when somebody tells you that, well, just a minute, if I get a reverse mortgage, my kids get ripped off, might be okay for me. How do you cover that? Because that comes up every single time.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we have to make sure that people understand is I'm a math guy. So I work with financial planners all day long. So I literally, what's crazy is today, the percentage that people get access to with these particular programs, that I can literally show a 10-year snapshot today, and that can actually show clients that there's still going to be plenty of money left over, even when by the time they pass away, versus what it used to be in the old days. In the old days, back about 15, 20 years ago, what happened was people got access to a lot more funds. They lived longer. And there might have been a possibility that they were upside down in that scenario. But there's some fascinating features people are not aware of. And that's why, when Harlan gets done with this class, if people really want to truly understand how this program works, then you're going to probably want to do an additional class with me on how it really works, on the costs, what's associated with the program, what does the numbers look like, how does the snapshot really look for their legacy, for their children that's left behind. I will give a better and probably a clearer snapshot if you spend more time with me on a particular class after Harlan gets done.
And then you're dealing with specific clients. You're saying, well, what about this? What about that? Because we're telling you broad brushstrokes, and I've done this for 20 years. So I've got my own reverse mortgage, and I bought a more expensive house because I knew that I had a reverse mortgage with a zero payment. And I get this thing every month, and it says, this is not a bill. So right now I owe $518,000 as of the end of July, and it says this is not a bill. And it will say that until I'm 150 years old. I'm not sure what's wrong with that deal. Chad wishes he was older. That's, and so does George, because they got to make payments on their mortgage every month. This is an incredible, valuable tool because I bought a more expensive house. A $1 million house goes up faster than a $500,000 house as far as the amount, if the percentages are exactly the same. So if the market goes up by 10%, the $500,000 house, of course, goes up by 50. $1 million house goes up by 100,000. So I gain more equity as my house goes up than somebody that is got a cheaper house because of the numbers that are in there. So the fact is that the kids do not get hurt, and I have more money. If I don't make a mortgage payment, I have more money. We've got 2 vacations scheduled in the next year with our kids that I'm paying for because I don't have a mortgage payment. I'm going to give my money away with a warm hand, not with a cold hand. I mean, after I'm dead, I don't get to go on vacation with them. They'll take the money and go on vacation without me. So I guess I'm kind of selfish. I'd like to go on vacation with them. Chad, is that something that really resonates and makes sense as you deal with people like me in the fourth quarter of life?
Yeah, I think it's definitely that question of just living comfortably too, and just knowing that you're not going to be a burden to your kids, that you're going to be able to afford a lifestyle that, again, you want to travel, you want you put so much effort into giving for others and raising a family, working for 3/4 of your life. Yeah, there's definitely an opportunity to kind of change the game pieces around, and again, especially with how expensive things are getting. Again, Denver market, Harlan, we've had a pretty good tax rate increase a couple months ago. We're one of the higher insurance states right now. We have insurance claims have gone up. We've had our Boulder fires that have definitely affected that. We had fire. I mean, I just had a tornado 10 miles away in Highlands Ranch.
Whoa.
So we're dealing with, again, not just the overall inflation components, but just the costs that go into just monthly expenses too.
Well, that's really the issue that people have to be aware of, is things are getting a little bit more expensive, not cheaper. I mean, inflation has hit everything, especially real estate. And like you talk about with the insurance, I was there the day after you guys had that and heard about the hail. Because I was down at the Schwab headquarters doing a presentation that next day after the tornado went through. So that kind of stuff affects things also in Florida with the wildfires. Imagine what's going to happen in Hawaii right now, right, with the cost. I mean, billions of dollars that are building over 1,000 buildings. I mean, that's just a horrible, sad thing, difficult to imagine. But all that stuff costs, and it adds to the cost of real estate. So think about it this way. There's really 4 things that you can do now to increase your listings. And bringing it back, we talked about California, but a few years ago, a realtor came to this class in Denver, and she lived in a kind of an aging, we call it a gentrifying neighborhood, meaning that's a nice word for there's a bunch of old people now in the neighborhood, people like me. And there was a lot of 2-story houses, a lot of deferred maintenance. Houses went for $400,000 to $500,000, mostly 2 stories. And so what happened is that she lived in that neighborhood, and they had bought a fixer-upper and did a great job with a younger couple, both professionals. She was the realtor. And so she said, I'm just going to go around to a very low-tech advertising thing, and I'm going to knock on doors of everybody over the age of that I think might be over 62 that has a 2-story house, and ask them if they've ever thought about moving to a 1-story house. I mean, one of the simplest. Everybody my age, I can still take steps 2 at a time. I'm pretty agile yet, but there may be a time when I can't even take 1 step at a time. And I'm very aware that that's what happens, because I saw what happened to my dad, my mom, and my grandparents. And so I kind of know that, hey, you don't want to be in a 2 or 3-story house when you're my age. I don't know if you're aware of this, but let's just talk ethically for a minute. Does it make sense to have somebody my age in their 60s or 70s get a 30-year mortgage on a 2-story house? I mean, does that really make sense? Did you know that every second of every day, there's a fall somewhere in the US, and 1 out of 5 of those falls cause serious injuries? $50 billion in health costs because of falls. And most of them happen because of steps. So why don't we get people my age into houses as well as steps? Doesn't that just make a lot of sense? They exist, like Heritage Todd Creek up in Thornton. Why don't we just get people into 1-story houses with 0 entry? I can live in this house if I've got a wheelchair. Wide doorways, all in one level. Why don't we just get people into the right house? But because only about 10% of houses are really designed that wheelchairs can be in the house. So what she did is she went to these people, $400,000, $500,000 houses, and said, have you ever thought about moving? And guess what they all said? Well, yeah, we'd like to get out of this 2-story house, and we got to fix the roof, and we got to do this. We should buy new windows, and all this other kind of stuff. But we don't want to, because we got the house paid off, and we don't want a mortgage payment. And she said, well, I happen to work with this mortgage company that will give you a mortgage that you don't have to pay if you don't want to. It's optional. And they said, well, how does that work? And then set up a call for us. In 3 months, she got 3 listings, $400,000 or $500,000 houses, and 3 sales at Heritage Todd Creek up in Thornton. It was a little further out than some of them wanted to be, but when they were looking at a brand new $750,000 house in a 55+ community, beautiful. I don't know if you've been up there, but it's a beautiful facility with a big clubhouse and the pool, and all of the pickleball and everything else that people our age like. It was awesome. And 4 listings, 4 sales, both sides. Going up there to the other house. So as I said before, there's millions of people like that. So when we talk about making sure that we're making a difference, I realized that reverse mortgages, I was working with a realtor group in Indiana a couple of years ago, and it was really funny. This realtor in the front row said, no, just a minute. You're talking about mortgages you don't have to pay off. You're talking about mortgages that have negative amortization, and the interest somehow gets paid. You can live there until you're 150. They're not a 30-year mortgage. They're a 50 or 60 or 70-year mortgage. I said, well, mine is actually a 90-year mortgage because it's good until I'm at least 150, and I started it when I was 62. And she said, oh, man, this is what you call cognitive dissonance. And I said, what did you say? And she said, this is cognitive dissonance. And I didn't know if she was talking about a disease or what the deal was, but I asked her about it and looked it up. And what's interesting is people look at reverse mortgages as something bad. And no, you shouldn't have a negative amortization loan, and you should pay it off, and you should be making payments every month. And this isn't right. And cognitive dissonance, this is defined in a psychological dictionary as something that you have 2 conflicting beliefs, values, or attitudes. This conflict causes unpleasant feelings of unease or discomfort. So what do people do when they hear about reverse mortgages? Look at the bottom. They attempt to relieve this tension, such as by rejecting, explaining away, or avoiding new information. They don't even want to hear about it. Half your clients don't even want to hear about reverse mortgages. They heard they're bad. They heard they're a ripoff, all this kind of thing. The fact of the matter is they just simply have not looked any further to understand what it's about. So it's not your job to sell a reverse mortgage. Not at all. It's your job simply to say, there's VA loans for veterans, there's first-time home buyer programs with 0 down, and then there's optional payment mortgages for people that are over the age of 62. Have you ever thought about looking into just the option? I'm not saying you should do it, but why don't we look at it before we go any further? And that's really the situation that as far as you need to go. And that's where somebody like George comes in and discusses the whole strategy of how does this affect your IRA? How does this affect your taxation issues? How does this affect your legacy for your kids? And isn't that something that you touch on in all of those things above, George, when you're dealing with somebody, not just to sell them a mortgage or a house, but how this is going to affect their whole retirement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just got done doing one in in Florida, as a matter of fact, where a client, I asked the overall questions like anything else, and that is, how much do you have in your nest egg? Do you have physically, any kind of money from an IRA, 401k? And I look at the whole retirement picture, and guess what? She had nothing. And I says, well, you stand to net 200 grand from the sale of this home. Do you think it would be maybe wise to put all 200 into a new home, to put towards buying a purchase of a home? And she says, probably not. And I says, okay, well, this is where I work with the realtor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to physically give her or him a range is where I think I can accomplish 2 goals. One is to replenish your cash bucket, where we can put some money from your housing wealth from selling your home into your nest egg. And then B, taking the difference is showing them how to buy a house with this concept and working with the realtor, giving them a range of where we should stay to kind of accomplish those goals. That's where we're going to do a deeper dive, because I want to make sure I'm an advocate for people 62 and over. I want to make sure these people understand we have to have that nest egg. It's all about cash flow. It's all about trying to make the money goes to the finish line. And doing this concept together, we can literally make a difference in a lot of people's lives doing this product.
And that's really the thing. And sometimes it makes sense to do a forward mortgage. And that's why at Movement, this is not just about selling somebody a reverse mortgage. This is about, we refer to ourselves as retirement mortgage professionals. So it may make sense for Chad to do a forward mortgage because they're going to be in it a shorter period of time, or because of, just their overall situation, or the amount of money they have down, the amount of money that's coming in from an inheritance later, or whatever. When you're dealing with Movement, we're not just selling you one or the other. If you deal with a company that only does reverses, they're going to sell you a reverse mortgage. A company that only does forward mortgage, they're going to sell you a forward because that's all they've got to sell. But I was at a cafe the other day, and I said, do you have any turkey burgers? And they said, oh, no, we only have hamburgers. And I said, well, I'd really like a turkey burger or some fish. Yeah, we don't have that. But hey, our burgers are really good. Well, she's going to sell me a burger because that's what they have on the menu. Think about that. You don't want to deal with a company that's not full service. If they don't have a VA loan, if they don't have a reverse, if they don't have a USDA loan, they're going to only be able to solve a few problems, whereas we can solve all of the problems when it comes to home ownership. So now, let me, so I've definitely covered the listing situation, and I want you to be aware that there's a bunch of listings that you've lost because you haven't given us a chance to talk to that client because you didn't know about this. So give us some of those cases and let us work on your no sales, so to speak, and get some listings, because let's move the old people out so we can get the young people in is kind of the mantra that we always talk about. I can make fun of old people because I am one. But the issue is that it also comes down to what you're going to buy. So let's take a look at why are people moving? I gave you the first one of why people leave. People leave because they want to be closer to family. Number one reason why all of us move. Number one reason, simply want to be closer to family. So what you need to do is talk to your millennials and say, hey, have your parents ever thought about moving here? And you know what most of them are going to say? Yeah, but it's too expensive in the Denver metro market. And they're out in Wyoming, and they've only got a $400,000 house, and it costs too much for them to move here if they sold that and moved here, or wherever, Nebraska, or wherever they're moving from. I moved from central Wisconsin to Minneapolis area to be by my kids. I didn't want to move to Minneapolis because it's a little rougher area and older houses and stuff like that. So I wanted to move to a nicer suburb. And guess what? Houses were more expensive. like quite a bit more expensive, like almost double. Did that keep me from doing it? No, because I wanted to be closer to family. And I also wanted to reduce my home expenses because I'm still working. I can afford to make a mortgage payment, but why would I really want to long term? Well, because I really wouldn't. And so I wanted to reduce my expenses. And so I didn't want to buy a super expensive house, but I had no problem buying a house that was about double because I could use the equity in my old house to put as a down payment onto the new house, and then the rest of it came in. And then some people move because of a change in health status. If you're not working with a divorce attorney, 12% of people move because they get a divorce. And silver divorce is a huge issue. Our divorce rate in our demographic has doubled in the last 10 years. No other demographic has went up as much as ours. And that is something that's sad, but it's reality. And you need to be involved at that point, because otherwise they'll make a decision to do dumb things because they're emotional anyway. And they'll go out and buy a house, get a big mortgage payment when their income just went in half because they get split up. And all kinds of mistakes are made later in life, buying the wrong house, or worse yet, renting and not buying anything. And now they're really sentenced to a problem because what control do you have over rent? And they got a fixed income on one Social Security check. And now how are they going to pay for rent as rent continues to go up? So a huge mistake for older people to rent. And then, of course, empty nesting, children moving out, house is too big. They want the cash from the sale of the prior home. But the main four things that you want to look at is wanting to be closer to family, wanting to reduce the home expenses. So how does this factor in for you? Okay, so these are the four things that you should do right now, like this afternoon, this week, tomorrow, if you want to increase your listings, because most real estate agents are just scared and they're hunkering down and they're afraid and they're not even taking any of these ideas because they've already got, they've been beat up and they're not getting listings. And when they've got somebody going after a house, it doesn't end up selling, and they're not getting a paycheck, working their butts off and not getting a paycheck. That's not, at least when somebody works at a Home Depot, they get paid if they work by the hour, whether somebody buys something or not. You guys never get paid unless somebody buys something. Kind of a significant issue. So the first thing you want to do is take a look back through your database, because you haven't thought about this before. Go through your database of senior clients who did not list with you. Anybody over 62 who did not list because they're not going to get enough cash out at closing. They said, hey, that's not enough. We're only going to get 400,000 and that's not enough. So we're just going to stay put. Because if we talk to those people, like I did to those folks in California, like the realtor did when she was getting people out to Thornton at Heritage Todd Creek, is let's talk to them about what it would look like to move. I don't think that any of you realize, let's pause for a second away from the numbers. George, how rewarding is it for the realtor and for you when somebody who never thought they could afford that house are at closing and they're getting ready to move into a brand new house with no maintenance, that's their dream house, that's completely changed their life?
I mean, the first thing they do, you can't thank me enough how they made a difference in helping that client, find that forever house again and being a solution for them. I had a realtor that happened to where they couldn't even qualify the normal way. What I mean by normal, meaning the traditional way with a regular mortgage. And you can tell they just really wanted to get out of the neighborhood and they wanted to move. And she just remembered that they were over 62. It just clicked. And we actually gave them some options. And they had an existing reverse mortgage, believe it or not, on their current house. So we were able to help them qualify, sell the property, pay off the existing reverse mortgage, and then help them buy the house they really want to be in, close to their friends. And the first thing a realtor did was just thank me up and down. And more importantly, they felt so good about providing a solution to those people, as far as being the expert on the purchasing side of this particular program. So it was very gratifying for the clients as well as obviously the realtors. So.
Yeah, all of us have experienced first-time home buyer scenario, and I used to do forward mortgages like Chad, and it's pretty cool to help a first-time home buyer buy a house, and sometimes they give you a hug, and sometimes they don't, depending upon the scenario. But it's very gratifying to put somebody in the in the fourth quarter of their life into the best possible living situation. It's really a neat scenario. So let's take a look at your database. There's a ton of your clients who did not buy because of price or rate, because they just thought, I can't afford it. Just like that couple that had a 2.75% mortgage that didn't want to go to a 7% mortgage. Rate is very inconsequential when it comes to reverse mortgage. It affects your loan to value, but the payment, as I mentioned to you earlier, is always zero. This is not a bill. So no matter what the interest rate is, my payment is always zero. And you know, people buy houses based on what their payment is. That's the first question that is asked of any loan officer. What's the rate and what's the payment? Kind of all the rest of the stuff isn't that important. On a reverse mortgage is, well, what's the down payment? They don't really care what the rate is. And they know the payment is zero. So it's a dramatically different thing. So take a look at those clients who are over 62 who did not buy because of price or rate, because there's a ton of them. And they might be 2, 3, 4, 10, 20 right in your database. If you just take a look back and say, just a minute. Yeah, that guy, he came here and he wanted to buy because when I called up my realtor and I dealt with a realtor who understood reverse mortgages, and this is going to go into the third bullet point here, because I told you I was going to give you 4 actionable things that you could do. But just for a second here, I'm going to step aside as far as the on the story of my own personal scenario. So I was my kids had moved to the Minneapolis area, and we're lucky because all 4 of them settled in the same city. That's unusual, but we're lucky that they're all here. So I was helping all of them buy houses. And coming up here, looking at the houses with them, and all 4 of them had different realtors and different, circle of friends, went to open houses. I met a few dozen realtors over the period of 4 or 5 years as my kids were buying houses. And one of them sold one house and bought another one. So I met a lot of realtors. I would walk into these meetings with out-of-state plates, drive in with out-of-state plates, and walk in generally holding one of my grandchildren. How many realtors ask me a very simple prospecting question? Hey, Grandpa, have you ever thought about moving close to your grandkids? A pretty basic question, right, Chad?
Absolutely. Something that, I know my parents have asked me that multiple times too.
Yeah, it's because quite frankly, the kids want you to move by them. I mean, they didn't want you around when they were teenagers, but now they want you around because you're free childcare. I mean, last weekend we were babysitting, this weekend we're babysitting. And so, and we don't charge for it. So and they can trust us. Well, mostly, I mean, they're always concerned about how much candy and stuff, that kind of stuff that we give them. But the issue is that they should have asked me that question, and not one real estate agent who saw me looked at me as a buyer. Not one. No, I'm mad about that. No, I'm just a little shocked. So when I was going to buy my house, which happened to be more expensive than all of our kids' houses and higher commissions, I called up a loan officer that I worked with and said, hey, who do you know that understands old people and reverse mortgages? And he said, oh, that's easy. It's Susan Lee. And so I called up Susan. I said, hey, Susan, we're kind of thinking about moving, not in a hurry or anything else, but our kids are up there and we know they're going to be there for a while. They all bought houses and we'd like to move up there too. And she said, okay, well, tell me a little bit about your house in Wisconsin. So I told her, and she said, okay, well, when you come up here, I'm going to show you houses. Your house in Wisconsin is selling for $500,000. I'm going to show you houses in the $800,000 to $1 million range. I said, oh, just a minute, Susan. We're small-time Wisconsin farmers. I grew up on a farm, and we're not big high rollers. We don't need $1 million house. And she laughed and said, Harlan, do you want me to show you houses that you want to buy or houses that you don't want to buy? And I said, well, I want you to show me houses that I want to buy. And she said, well, based on your house in Marshfield, Wisconsin, the house that you're going to want up here is going to be in a community like Edina, one of the other suburbs that's safe, that is got mature trees and close to shopping and hospitals and all that sort of thing. And I said, well, it's kind of up to you, but show me some cheaper houses too. The cheapest house she showed us was a $750,000 house. We bought this house for $1 million on the nose, because, and what did she tell me? Well, Harlan, you're going to do a reverse mortgage anyhow, so you're only going to pay about 60% down. So it's not like you're going to be paying $1 million for the house. She understood that right away. And otherwise, we'd be looking for $500,000 houses and would have drove her nuts looking for houses that we didn't want to buy. And she would have tried to show us all kinds of houses and was, oh, can we get that one cheaper? You know, we would have drove her nuts. Now I have 3, and I told my friends about her. I was really impressed with her. And it takes quite a bit to impress me because I met a lot of realtors. I now have 3 Cutco knives in my drawer out there in the kitchen that says the sharpest realtor in town, Susan Lee, with her phone number, because she gives me one of those knives every time that I give her a closing.
I love those knives. Those are great knives.
They are. And my wife is bugging me. When are you going to give Susan another referral? Because we want some more knives for the collection. So the issue is that's the same thing you can do, which brings me to the third scenario here. And that is call every client under 62, all the millennials that you've dealt with, and ask them a very simple question. What are your parents' plans? If your parents ever thought about moving up here, you know, we sold that house to you a 3 years ago. I understand you got a little baby now. You know, if your parents ever thought about moving closer to you, and that you will get all, because everybody has at least 2 sets of parents. And if there's a divorce, there's 4 sets of parents. So every millennial is the key to somewhere between 2 and 4 leads. I mean, it's a big deal. So make sure that you are taking a look at that scenario and saying, well, just a minute. What's going on with your parents? Do they want to move to Denver? I understand it's a high cost area, but if it's a $700,000 house, they don't have to pay $700,000. They can bring in $400 from Wyoming and they're done making mortgage payments for the rest of their life. How does that work again? And so you have a ton of leads that you can get without doing any advertising, any social media. You just go through your database of the old people, database of the young people that have parents that are old people, and you are in awesome shape to be able to get some leads this afternoon or tomorrow or next week, depending upon how quickly you can go through some numbers. The last one is kind of a sad one, but connect with a divorce attorney. I mentioned to you about how many of our folks are in that situation. Sad deal, but you need to be there to make a sad deal a little bit better, that you can at least get them into houses. Because the one thing for sure that happens with every divorce, most people that get a divorce, like 99.5%, do not want to live together anymore. So one of them's got to move out, or usually both of them, and they get 2 other houses. So it's usually 1 sale and 1 listing and 2 sales of purchases on other houses. So you want to work with that divorce attorney, because guess how many divorce attorneys know about reverse mortgages? Like none. And they don't understand how this works. We try to get to those divorce attorneys, but most of them will never even give us the time of day on a mortgage situation, because they, oh no, you know, I specialize in silver divorce, and yeah, there's not a real call for mortgages, and so they don't even understand what's going on with reverse mortgages. But in your network, if you can get to visit with some of them, because they know that most of their clients are going to need a real estate agent, and very few real estate agents call on divorce attorneys. Huge advantage from that standpoint. Okay, I'm going to stop there just for a second. Chad, I don't see any questions right now in the chat. If you do have any, just simply let us know. Chad, from your perspective, the real estate agents that you work with, we found that about 99% of real estate agents do not know that you can use a reverse to purchase a home.
I know, I'm surprised too how it's talked about. It's not widely known. People sometimes think that it's a complicated process, that it takes a longer timeline, that it has some unique features that, again, they're worried maybe that offer might not be accepted by a seller, you know, if it has a reverse mortgage financing.
Yes, that's something that, George, how many calls have you made to the listing realtor to explain that this is actually better than a cash offer or better than a forward mortgage?
Actually, I speak to all of them. I have the realtors. I educate the realtors on the listing side and on the buying side. On both sides, I educate both realtors to make sure they both understand what we're doing and how we separate ourselves from all the other borrowers, to give every advantage I can to help the realtor out to get win that listing. So, or win that contract offer. So yeah, absolutely. It's all about education. It's really what it boils down to. So
And George, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding too is that with a reverse mortgage, credit isn't as important. Again, obviously down payment is part of the calculation, but again, we're not looking at income either, right?
No, I mean, we do look at income. Actually, it's changed over the years, right? So I've been doing this 20 years, right? Back in the old days, if they were over 62 and they were breathing and they had equity, it was easy to close the loan in 2 to 3 weeks. Today, they do a financial look back in the last 2 years. They want to make sure people can afford to pay their taxes and insurance.
Right.
Again, it's a requirement. And what they're trying to determine is do we have to set up an escrow account in addition to the down payment? So, and they're just trying to see and make sure that people can afford their tax and insurance. So if they qualify and they have the ability and they have a good payment history, then they pay their own taxes and insurance. So we don't have to set up that escrow account. So then the down payment stays right around that 60 to 65% range as far as the down payment is concerned. But they do look at income to supersede the expenses. The difference between your world and our world is it's not credit score based or DTI. We just have to have enough income to supersede the expenses.
Right. Another scenario that comes up, I think, or at least that has come up with me a couple times, is we have, again, 2 seniors, but one is in good health and one isn't. So we have someone, again, that might be, nearing end of life, but they want to live it in a comfortable way. What happens when one person passes?
Yeah, that's probably one of the things that is the biggest fear out there. I wrote a chapter in my book called "The Bear in the Closet," and I thought when I was a little kid, if my dad snored on the other side of the wall, that there was a bear in the closet, and I was sure, in fact, that there was a bear in the closet, to the point that I would be crying and shaking, and I was scared to death of the bear in the closet. I've got other psychological problems, but that was one of the bigger ones. Anyway. My mom would come in, take me to the closet, turn the light on, and say, "See, son, there's no bear in the closet. That's just your dad snoring." There's a lot of people that think there's a bear in the closet when it comes to a reverse mortgage, so they're scared of it and run away from it. And one of the main reasons why that happened is because there used to be a scenario where you could do a reverse mortgage and take your younger spouse, which was usually a younger wife, an older man and a younger wife, and take them off title. And then everybody would be happily go on until he died and had a heart attack and dropped over. And then not only did the wife have to go to the funeral, but she comes home and a few weeks later sees that she's got to move out of the house. Horrible situation. Was that the fault of the reverse mortgage? No, it was the fault of the stupid man that took his wife off from title. I mean, it was just a dumb decision. And I can say that because I've been a stupid man sometimes about different things, but it was the decision of the husband that did something that should not have been done. It was like he disinherited his wife from his life insurance policy. It is a dumb thing. Now the rules have changed. And if you have a younger spouse, which I have an underage spouse, anybody under 62 is underage. And my wife was 59 when we did the reverse mortgage, but she still qualified because she was married to me. So the rules changed and said, if you're married to an underage spouse, we're going to give you a little bit less money because we got to figure for her age. But if I die tomorrow or I go into a nursing home and she's left here alone in the house, she can stay in the house as long as she wants until she's 150.
That's awesome.
And so there's nothing to worry about as far as her needing to move. And if she wants to move because she no longer wants to live here, or the kids move or whatever, she can sell the house. But if she doesn't want to sell the house, she never has to sell it. So it is the safest possible mortgage that anyone can get for the 4th quarter of life. There is no other way to guarantee that you're going to be as good a shape from a retirement situation as having a reverse mortgage. People say, well, no, you're better off having the house paid off free and clear. No, you're not. You're actually better off with it not being paid off because you lose your tax benefits and you also lose the liquidity of all the money that you put in the house. And so and it's not better to have a regular forward mortgage or a line of credit because then you got to pay the money back. You borrow 100 grand, you got to pay back 200 grand. And so the best possible scenario in the 4th quarter of life is to get a reverse mortgage. And so few people understand that from a safety standpoint. So a really long answer to a short question, Chad, but it's really clear and definite that it is foolish to not look at the reverse for a purchase situation when you want to guarantee that your wife or your husband is going to be in good shape.
Yeah, that's golden. Again, we think about legacy for our spouse and our kids. And I think again, just knowing that by having again that backup plan of having that special person and making sure that their needs are met, that's huge. One thing again we dove into a little bit, guys, but it was again the ability to delay like other retirement draws too. So again, if on a forward mortgage, a lot of people are pulling from their 401k and IRA, Social Security. Something that I've heard you guys talk about is that with a reverse mortgage, you can possibly delay and let that IRA grow more, or take a higher payment on Social Security and delay that Social Security benefits a few more years to get more money.
That's one of the biggest deals that we deal with. And when George is doing the strategizing with a potential client, is everybody knows the three most important things about real estate: location, location, location. The most important thing about retirement is cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. It's not assets. It's not IRA accounts. It's cash flow, because your paycheck isn't coming in anymore like it was when you were working. So now it's a situation where, where do I get my money? Well, you can get it from Social Security, and Social Security generally doubles from 62 to 70. So if you're going to live a long time, it is foolish to take your Social Security at 62 or 63. If you're not healthy and you're going to die soon, probably a good idea to take your Social Security as soon as you can. But most people are not in that situation. And if you're living into your late 70s and your 80s, you are better off taking Social Security at 70 instead of taking it at 62, or certainly waiting until 67 or 65 or whatever. So taking money out, many people take a Social Security check to make their mortgage payment. Huge mistake. And so without question, it is very, very important that people are aware of knowing that, hey, you don't have to pull money out of your IRA yet. You don't have to pull money out of your Social Security yet, because your payment is zero. And so you're okay to allow your house bucket to lose a little bit of equity, because you're gaining way more cash. So when you do a reverse mortgage, you lose equity in your right pocket, but you're gaining a whole bunch of cash in your left pocket. And overall, you're better off. It's the same pocket. It's the same.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Chad, I think that's a great question. But, I get people always ask me all the time, they go, George, let me get this straight on this program. I don't have to make a payment. I go, no. And they say, well, doesn't interest grow on the loan? And I said, well, yes. And they go, well, doesn't it eat into the equity of the property? And I said, well, yes. I said, but you're forgetting the other half of the equation. They go, what's that? I said, well, if you're not making a mortgage payment, then what are you gaining? And they go, cash. I go,
that's money in your pocket.
right. So we're so caught up on equity that people forget the other half of the equation. And what the people don't understand is that we're giving up a little bit of equity later to do what today in retirement, to live more comfortable today in retirement. That's what it's all about, right? It's all about cash flow, what Harlan's talking about.
Well, and a lot of real estate agents say, yeah, but it might be good, but what about the end? Well, this is my personal amortization schedule, and let's just take this all the way to the end. If we take a look at this particular scenario, when I get to be 100 years old, I will owe at least $2.6 million on my little $500,000 loan that I start out with 40 years from now. Do I care? No, I'm not concerned about that. I mean, I'm aware of it and I look at my statements, but what will my house be worth? Well, according to a 4% increase every year, which that's been the national average, has been higher in Colorado. But according to a 4% increase, my house will be worth $4.7 million. So my kids, who will then be 70 themselves, they get $2 million. So there's still money left if the house appreciates, and if they never make a payment. If I make payments somewhere along in here, then I won't owe as much. But first of all, it's unlikely I'd live to be 100. Probably more likely that'd be somewhere 87 is normal life expectancy. My dad passed away at 86. So 1.5 million is what I would probably owe. The house would be worth 2.9. My kids would get 1.4 million. Mm-hmm. If I live longer, they even get more. So the issue is that there isn't a worry at the end. This is a payoff like any other mortgage. But let's talk about deflation. It happened in 2008, 2009. So what happens if I die at 100, I owe 2.6 million, and the house is only worth 1.5, never went up much at all? Well, I just won the game, or my family won the game. I didn't win the game, I'm dead, but my family won the game because they don't have to pay that difference. It's paid for by FHA mortgage insurance.
Yep.
Wiped out. And no tax consequences at all. In fact, the kids get a tax deduction. So I'm guaranteed not to lose. Now, in that kind of situation, that would be a guaranteed short sale. My kids would still sell it so that they could get the tax deduction. The realtor would still be paid the 6%. Everything else would be fine with the title company, and everybody gets paid. The kids don't get any cash out because the equity is all gone, but the difference is paid for. And, you know, one of the things, I don't want to get into prognostications in the future because the bad thing about trying to predict the future, as they say, is that nobody knows what it is. And so, but what happens when all of us baby boomers start dying? My brother just had a birthday a couple days ago, and he turned 75. He's the beginning of the baby boomers from back in 1946. And so he's 3/4 of a century old, and then I'm the end of the baby boomers. What happens when I'm turning 80, and somewhere between my brother's death and my death, there's going to be 70 million people dead. So what does that do to housing? Is the inventory going to be a problem then? Probably not, because a lot of us own 2 houses. So my kids and all of their friends are going to be selling their parents' houses all at the same time. Is it a good idea to stick all your money in a house that might not be worth that much? Right now, we see house prices just cranking up and it's crazy and everything's going great. What happens if my house is not worth 4.7? What happens if it's worth $1 million? Because you can't give houses away because there's too many of them and they're dated and they're older and all of those things. The smartest thing I could have done, my kids will say, that was smart that dad got a reverse mortgage and gave that to everybody else as well, because now we don't have to worry about that. We still inherit the life insurance, the Roth IRAs, all the other money that dad left behind. But he did a smart thing on the house because he got more money out of the house than what it was worth. So but if I'm wrong and there's massive inflation, my house is worth $10 million, they'll get that money too. So I'm just guaranteed not to lose, and my kids are guaranteed not to lose. This product needs a whole lot more attention when it comes to that kind of planning.
Yeah. Well, George, Harlan, I think you guys defined the opportunity in the market, in a market right now that's tight. Again, with higher rates, harder to qualify, equity-rich homes, primarily for seniors, going through the process of the things they need to do. They need to move closer to family. They need to move because of health reasons. Get out of that 2-story. I have a ranch and I love it. So I'm probably never moving unless it was to get closer to my kids. But I really enjoyed you guys diving deep into the reasons why realtors need to have that conversation. And they need to ask the question, and I think they're not the experts. They just need to ask the question. That will open up the next conversation, and we can dive deeper into, does this make sense for a purchase?
Yeah, to conclude on that, Chad, what's the action steps? Well, I gave you the 4 action steps, but what do you do when you get somebody that has an interest or fits the program? If somebody comes to us and says, what kind of house should I buy? And should I buy in this neighborhood or that neighborhood? And what are the school systems like? And what's the shopping? We're not supposed to answer those questions. We say, well, you know something? I've got a really good real estate agent that'll be able to tell you all of that.
Yeah.
The same thing applies the other way. Just simply say, you know, before you buy your last house, I think you need to talk to our lender who has a whole bunch more knowledge on this than I do. And I'd like you to decide and talk to them before you decide what kind of house to buy, because it may just affect what house we take you looking for, just like with Susan when she took me to more expensive homes. So get that over to us, and George or myself or one of our RMPs, our retirement mortgage professionals, Chad will take care of that. We work on Chad's team to make that difference. If it's a forward mortgage, Chad will take care of it. If it's a reverse mortgage, he brings our team in on it. Either way, we're going to serve you. and more importantly, your client. And you know something? Us old people are a little bit more loyal than the millennials. We are really good at giving referrals. In fact, I got 3 Cutco knives to prove it.
Well, George and Harlan, I really appreciate it. I know your time's valuable. I love that Movement has made the reverse mortgage one of their biggest priorities. Going forward, again, this is something that makes a difference, and we value people, and it's proof in what Movement does.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity, Chad. And whether you're listening to this live or whether you're listening to it on a recording, give us a call. Let us talk to your client to get them into the right house, not the one they have to settle for.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Harlan.
All right, take care. Thanks, guys.